A billionaire betrayed by the two people he trusted the most, but saved not by power, not by wealth, but by the one person everyone overlooked, a poor housemaid. "Sir, please, I'm begging you." The voice was shaky, desperate. Chief Silas stopped mid-step in the hallway, one hand adjusting his wristwatch, the other holding his car key. Standing in front of him, knees pressed to the cold tiles, was Dupe, the housemaid. Her palms joined, her face streaked with tears. Silas frowned. "What's this?" Dupe raised her head. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling. "Please, sir, don't leave this house today. Something terrible will happen if you step out." Silas blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Her words rushed out in a whisper. "I had a dream last night. You were wearing the same outfit. You entered your car, but you didn't come back. There was blood everywhere. People were shouting. Your name." "Please, sir, don't go." Silas stared at her, unsettled. The air suddenly felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen flashed. Toby, again. He was already late for the investors' meeting. A deal worth billions. "Get up," Silas muttered, trying to steady his voice. "This is not the time." "Please, sir." Dupe pressed her forehead to the floor. "I know I'm only a maid, but if I keep quiet and you go out, I will never forgive myself." And then, heels echoed on the staircase. Mariah appeared, his wife, robe tied tight, makeup glowing even in the morning light. She froze when she saw Dupe on the floor. "What's going on here?" she asked coldly. Silas's voice was quiet. "She's saying I shouldn't leave the house." Dupe turned to Mariah, still kneeling. "Ma, I saw it. If he goes today, he won't return alive." Mariah scoffed. "This is exactly why I said we should let her go. She's now a prophetess?" "Mariah," Silas began. "No, let me finish." Her voice cut sharp. "You have an important meeting this morning. Money is involved. Contracts are waiting. And now a maid is holding you back with nonsense dreams? Silas, you must be joking." But Dupe's voice didn't shake this time. "I'm sorry, Ma, but I had to speak." Silas looked from his wife's cold eyes to the trembling maid. Something in his chest tightened. No noise, no thunder, just a quiet warning he couldn't shake. And for the first time in years, Chief Silas Ademo hesitated before walking out the door. Mariah stepped further, down the staircase, folding her arms, her lips curved in a half-smirk. "Silas," she said, her voice dripping with irritation, "you're actually listening to this girl?" "She says I shouldn't leave the house," Silas replied, his eyes still locked on Dupe. "Why?" Mariah shot back. "Because of a dream?" Dupe lifted her face again, voice low but steady. "It wasn't just a dream, Ma. It was clear. He left the house and he never came back. There was blood, people screaming his name." Mariah's laugh, sharp and cold. "Do you hear yourself? Silas, you have investors waiting right now, billions on the line. Your partner has probably been calling nonstop. And here you are, letting a maid keep you hostage in your own home. This is nonsense." Dupe lowered her head again. "I'm sorry, sir, but if I don't say it, I won't forgive myself." Mariah snapped. "Get out of the way, Dupe, you're fired." But Silas raised a hand. "Wait." Mariah turned on him, eyes wide. "Wait for what? You cannot be serious." Silas didn't answer immediately. His chest was heavy, his heartbeat too loud for his own comfort. He kept seeing her face. Dupe's face, red-eyed, terrified, yet honest. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't trying to gain favor. She looked like someone who had seen something she couldn't unsee. His phone buzzed again. Toby, investors waiting. His future sitting at that boardroom table. Mariah's voice cut the silence. "Silas, if you lose this deal today because of a maid's nonsense dream, don't blame me when everything comes crashing down." The quiet voice inside his chest grew stronger. Slowly, Silas stepped back from the door. He placed his car key beside his phone on the glass table, and without a word he sat down on the sofa, staring at the marble tiles like they might explain why his hands were shaking. Dupe gasped softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Mariah's jaw dropped. "You're not going." Silas's voice was calm but firm. "I'm not going. For God's sake, Silas, I said I'm not going." The room froze. Mariah hissed, spun around and marched back upstairs, her perfume trailing like smoke. Silas leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes still on the tiles. The weight in his chest was heavy, but there was also something else. Something that felt like survival. And as silence settled over the mansion, the maid's whisper replayed in his head, "If you step out today, you will not come back alive." The mansion was silent. Only the hum of the air conditioner filled the room as Silas sat frozen on the sofa, his car key abandoned on the table. Then, his phone vibrated again. The screen flashed, "Office Secretary." He hesitated, then picked up. "Hello, sir." Her voice was shaking. It's Sean, your driver. He's been in an accident." Silas sat up straight. "What?" "Third Mainland Bridge, sir. A truck lost control. It hit your car, the Lexus you normally use. It somersaulted. He's in the hospital, unconscious. We thought you were inside." The words echoed in his ear, the same car, the same time, the same road. For a long moment, Silas couldn't speak. He lowered the phone slowly, his eyes fixed on nothing. The image of Dupe kneeling, begging, crying came crashing back. What if he had brushed it off? What if he had walked out that door just 10 minutes earlier? His chest tightened. The silence of the house suddenly felt deafening. From the hallway, footsteps approached. Mariah appeared, robe-tied, phone in her hand. She looked at him, brows raised. "So, you're just sitting here all day?" she asked flatly. Silas didn't look at her. "There was an accident." Her thumb paused mid-scroll. "Accident?" "Sean took the car," he said, voice low. "A truck hit him. The car is gone." Mariah blinked, then shrugged. "Okay, and you think that means what?" "I think," Silas's voice cracked just slightly, "if I had gone out, I might not be here." She scoffed. "Please, Silas, don't turn this into some spiritual story. Accidents happen every day. Lagos." At last he looked up, his eyes piercing through hers. "You're not even shaken, not even a little? Why should I be? You're standing here, aren't you?" Silas stared at her, reading the calm in her face, the coldness in her eyes. Something shifted deep inside him. Finally, he spoke quietly, firmly. "I'm keeping her." Mariah frowned. "Keeping who?" "The maid." Her eyes narrowed. "She needs to go. She saved my life." "She caused unnecessary drama," Mariah snapped. "She has no right telling you what to do in this house." Silas's voice was final. "This is my house too. She stays." Mariah froze, speechless for a moment, then spun on her heel and stormed away, perfume trailing behind her like smoke. The house fell silent again. But this time, Silas's silence wasn't confusion. It was realization. Something in his life was not as it seemed, and he had just seen his first proof. Chief Silas Ademo was not just rich. He was respected. Unlike the loud billionaires who chased social media fame with noisy parties, flashy interviews, and endless drama, Silas moved differently. Quiet, calculated. He was the kind of man whose name carried weight even in rooms he didn't enter. In Nigeria's real estate world, few names rang louder than Crestrock Real Estate Group. Luxury high-rises in Banana Island, sprawling estates in Abuja, gated communities in Lekki, their projects reshaped skylines. And at the helm of it all were two men, Silas and his longtime partner, Toby Onishila. Together they had built Crestrock from nothing. From the days of working out of a cramped Yaba apartment, making cold calls with a single laptop, to now sitting across billion naira contracts and foreign investors. Silas was the strategist, the quiet mind, the man who listened more than he spoke, the one who read between silences. Toby, on the other hand, was the showman, loud, charming, always dressed sharp, always knowing the right joke, the right handshake, the right lie to make people believe in dreams. One was the blueprint, the other, the salesman, and together they had created an empire. To the outside world, their friendship was unshakable. Blood brothers in everything but blood. Champagne glasses clinking at board meetings, laughter echoing at business retreats. Promises sealed with handshakes and grins. But only Silas knew the truth. Behind the laughter, they were nothing alike. Where Silas believed in patience, Toby believed in shortcuts. Where Silas sought strategy, Toby craved spectacle. Where Silas carried loyalty quietly in his chest, Toby carried ambition loudly in his eyes. Still, the company grew. The money flowed. Deals stacked like bricks on bricks. And for years, Silas ignored the cracks, because to him, loyalty was not a choice. It was a principle. And in Toby, he had placed more than trust. He had placed his life's work. To the outside world, Chief Silas had it all. A glittering career, a mansion in Lekki, and a wife people called perfect. Mariah Adamo was slim, stunning, always glowing like a magazine cover. Together, she and Silas looked like the couple. Everyone prayed to be. Matching outfits at weddings, flawless smiles in anniversary photos, endless compliments from friends. God really blessed you two. You're perfect together. But behind the gates of that mansion, it was a different story. Silas had married Mariah for love. Real love. He met her at a luxury interior store years earlier. She laughed at his taste in furniture. He asked for her number, and the rest unfolded quickly. But love didn't stay. By their second year, it was clear. Mariah didn't care for companionship. She cared for comfort. She didn't cook. She didn't clean. She didn't want questions. She wanted space, and she hated housemaids. In less than a year, she had fired 6. Her reasons were always small, petty, cutting. She opens the curtains too wide. She breathes too loud while mopping. She walks like a market woman. Each time Silas returned home to see packed bags by the door, another maid dismissed. He tried to protest once. "I'm not running a school," Mariah snapped. "This is my home. If I don't like someone, they leave." So Silas stopped arguing. He buried himself in work, in Crestrock, in silence. Then one Friday afternoon, the last maid disappeared without notice. Silas came home to a cold meal, unfolded clothes, and an empty living room. Mariah was asleep in the spa room. Later that evening, she appeared at the dining table and said casually, "I found a new one. She's arriving tomorrow." And that was how Dupe walked into their lives. Quiet, small, brown-skinned, hair neatly, packed in cornrows, plain gown, flat slippers, no jewelry, no drama. She greeted everyone politely and went straight to work. Within hours, the floors were swept and mopped, the guest toilet washed, the pantry arranged, without being told. She didn't touch what wasn't hers. She didn't complain. She didn't even raise her voice. She moved like someone who didn't want to be noticed. But Silas noticed her. Not in the wrong way. In the curious way. Because she was different. Most. Maids he had seen wasted time with gossip, pretended to be busy, watched TV for hours. But Doopy, she was awake before sunrise, ironing clothes like a hotel professional, cleaning windows without being asked, arranging things no one remembered were out of place. Even Mariah, who never complimented anyone, muttered one night, "She's not as annoying as the last ones." And in that house, from Mariah, that was the highest praise possible. Days passed. Weeks passed. Silas came home one evening to hot food waiting, clothes folded, rooms calm. No shouting, no complaints, no drama. For the first time in years, his home felt like peace. But what Silas didn't know was this. Peace was never the reason Dupe had been sent into his life. From the very first week, it became impossible not to notice the rhythm she carried. Into the house, Dupe was not loud, but her silence had weight. Before sunrise, she was already awake. The faint clink of an iron, the soft sound of sweeping, always early, always steady. She pressed shirts so sharply they looked like they had come from a 5-star hotel. She polished the windows until they reflected like mirrors. No one had to remind her. No one had to repeat instructions. She simply saw what needed to be done and did it. Even Mariah, who always found faults, had less to say. She would pass by and murmur under her breath, "At least she's not lazy like the rest." It wasn't praise, but in that house, it was close enough. Silas noticed more than the chores. He noticed the small things, how Dupe never lingered in the living room when he was around, how she kept her eyes low, never nosy, never intrusive, how she finished her work with a kind of discipline he hadn't seen in years. The days rolled by quietly, and for the first time in a long time, the mansion felt balanced. One evening, Silas walked in from work, tired, ready to face the usual chaos, but instead he found silence. The floors gleamed, dinner was warm, neatly set on the dining table. His clothes were folded on the couch. Mariah was upstairs, nowhere near the living room. It felt unreal. He sat down and thought to himself, finally, someone who brings peace into this house. But peace was never Dupe's mission, because every corner she cleaned, every plate she washed, every shirt she pressed was just a quiet prelude. The real reason she had come into that house was still waiting. It was 2 days after the accident. Silas sat at the dining table, scrolling quietly through his tablet. The air was calm, broken only by the faint clatter of plates as Dupe cleared the dishes. She moved quickly, almost invisibly, as though she wasn't even there, but then she paused. "Sir?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Silas looked up, puzzled. "Yes?" She bent slightly, pretending to pick up a napkin from the floor. Her eyes stayed low, her words lower. "Please, sir, don't sign any documents this week." Silas froze, his brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Her whisper dropped even further. "I had another dream. This one was clearer. I saw papers. You signed them. And not long after, everything collapsed. Your company. Your accounts were frozen. There were policemen. Sir, they put you in handcuffs." Silas's chest tightened. He sat straighter in his chair. Dupe's eyes flicked toward the hallway, as if afraid someone might hear. "If you sign any document this week, you won't just lose your money. You may lose your freedom, for something you didn't even do before." Silas could ask another question. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. Mariah entered, phone in hand, voice sharp. "Dupe, what are you still doing here? Clear those plates and move." Dupe lowered her head quickly, gathered the tray, and slipped out of the room. But her words did not leave. They sank deep. Silas sat there, tablet forgotten, his pulse racing. A driver nearly lost his life in his car days ago. Now this warning. About documents? Coincidence or something else? He could not shake the fear in her voice, the quiet certainty in her eyes. And that night, long after the house went silent, Silas lay awake, her whisper replaying in his head. "If you sign anything, this week you may end up in jail for something you didn't even do." 2 days later, the calm of the mansion was broken by a booming voice from the gate. "My guy!" It was Toby. The same Toby who had been calling endlessly about the missed meeting. He strolled in wearing a crisp black polo, wrist gleaming with a gold watch, his grin wide enough to hide 100 secrets. He hugged Silas hard. "Omo, thank God you didn't enter that car. That accident was brutal, Ain. Lagos would have mourned you." Silas gave a small, measured smile. "I was lucky." Toby laughed, clapping him on the back. "Lucky indeed. But let me guess, the maid is still around? The one that gave you prophecy that morning?" Silas nodded. Toby burst into laughter. "My brother, since when did you start listening to dreams?" Silas's tone was calm. "I don't ignore warnings. Anymore." Toby raised a brow, the grin faltering for just a second before snapping back into place. "Anyway, forget that one. The Dubai deal is still alive. All we need is your signature and we're back in business." Silas said nothing. Toby's voice dropped slightly, persuasive. "This is gold, Silas. Foreign partners are waiting. I told them you'll sign by the weekend. Don't let small delays mess this up. Trust me." Hours later, after Toby had left, a leather folder arrived at the mansion. Thick, heavy, sealed. Silas sat in his study and opened it carefully. At first glance, everything looked normal. Contracts, numbers, project names. But the deeper he read, the more his stomach twisted. The land value listed was lower than what they had originally agreed. The payout account was foreign, but not one he recognized. Hidden beneath the signatures in fine print were movements. That didn't add up. He stared at the papers for a long time, and then Dupe's whisper returned. If you sign any document this week, you may end up in jail for something you didn't even do. Silas closed the folder. Slowly, deliberately, he locked it in his drawer. For the first time, he felt the sting of suspicion. Could it be that the danger was not just outside his gate, but sitting right across his boardroom table? That night, Silas didn't sleep. The folder sat locked inside his drawer, but it felt alive, like it was breathing in the dark. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Dupe's trembling face. Every time he opened them, he heard Toby's booming laugh. By morning, he made a call. Not to Toby, not to Mariah. To an old friend in finance, one who owed him a favor. I need you to run checks, Silas said quietly. On some documents, discreetly. The friend agreed. Over the next few days, information trickled in. Small details at first. Unfamiliar. Accounts, strange project names, transfers hidden under clever disguises. But the deeper they dug, the uglier the picture became. For over 2 years, Toby had been siphoning money out of Crestrock. Not small amounts, massive sums, billions. Hidden under shell companies, buried in offshore accounts, labeled as consulting fees and land acquisitions, foreign permits. It was theft. Layered, calculated, careful. Silas sat in his study staring at the reports. Each page felt like a knife. Every figure was proof. It wasn't just betrayal. It was criminal. The man he had trusted like a brother. The partner who toasted with him at every victory. The one he believed would protect the company as much as he did, had been draining it dry. And now, Toby was pushing him to sign a deal that would have handed over the last of their empire, while framing Silas as the guilty one. Silas leaned back in his chair, chest heavy, fists clenched. The truth was no longer a whisper. It was right in front of him, but he couldn't confront Toby yet. Not without more proof, not without a plan. So he swallowed the fire burning in his chest, and silently, he began to prepare. The atmosphere in the mansion grew heavier with each passing day. Mariah became restless. The smallest things set her off. A drawer left slightly open, a towel folded the wrong way, and always, her anger found its way back to Dupe. She's too comfortable, Mariah snapped one morning, slamming a cabinet shut. She moves around like she owns the place. Silas didn't look up from his tablet. She's efficient. She's disrespectful. She's disciplined. Mariah folded her arms, glaring. She's going. I want her out of this house. Silas raised his eyes at last, his voice calm but firm. She's staying, her face twisted. You're choosing a maid over me? I'm choosing my peace. That night, Mariah didn't sleep beside him. She locked herself in the guest room, pacing like a caged animal. Her fury boiled until finally, she picked up her phone and dialed Toby. He answered, his voice tired but sharp. What is it this time? Mariah's voice cracked. I can't do this anymore, Toby. I'm suffocating in this house. What happened now? He's still protecting that girl, she hissed. He refused to sack her. She keeps interfering. With everything. She's just a housemaid, but... No, Toby interrupted. She's not just a housemaid. Mariah lowered her voice. She's a curse. Every time we set something in motion, she blocks it. That night on Admiralty, do you remember? Your boys waited for hours. He should have been gone. But somehow she called him. She told him to take another route. It's like she always knows. Silence filled the line. Then Toby exhaled heavily. Mariah pressed on, her voice trembling. You told me to marry him. You promised we'd take part of the company, access the funds. We've been planning this for years, but it's dragging, it's falling apart. And if something doesn't happen soon, I'm walking away. Toby's tone softened. You love me, Mariah. Don't forget why you did all this. Yes, she whispered. That's the only reason. But I hate living like this. I hate pretending to be a wife. I hate sharing a bed with a man I don't love. Toby said nothing for a long time, then coldly, "We'll find another way." Mariah closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, but what neither of them knew was that their time was already running out. Saturday evening came quiet and slow. Silas sat on the balcony, scrolling through audit reports on his tablet, the weight of betrayal still pressing on his chest. He barely heard her footsteps until Mariah appeared in the living room below. She was dressed in a fitted travel gown, scarf loosely tied around her braids, nails freshly painted. She stood near the staircase, casually checking her phone as if nothing in the world was wrong. "I'll be going tomorrow morning," she said. Silas didn't look up. "Where to?" "Abeokuta. Daddy hasn't been feeling well. I need to check on him." He nodded slowly. "All right, I should be back Monday," she added, waiting for something, maybe a question, maybe a word of concern, maybe a touch of affection. But Silas only nodded again and returned to his screen. The silence unsettled her. She forced a small smile, then walked upstairs, heels clicking against the marble. Silas did not move. He didn't call after her, he didn't argue. He didn't ask, but inside his decision had already been made. Later that night, when the house was dark, he picked up his phone and made a quiet call. "Follow her tomorrow," he instructed. "Don't lose sight, don't interfere, just send me updates." The next morning at 7:15 a.m., Mariah left the mansion. Her designer handbag swung casually at her side, her perfume trailing in the air. She leaned down, kissed Silas lightly on the cheek, and waved goodbye. He watched her car roll out of the compound, his face unreadable. At 9:03 a.m., the first update, "Arrived. She didn't go to Abeokuta. She drove straight to Victoria Island, checked into a boutique hotel on Adetokunbo Adamola Street. Room 406. Name on the register, Mrs. Tolu Ogunlade." At 9:47 a.m., the second update came. Toby arrived. Cap pulled. Low sunglasses on, simple black polo shirt. He didn't check in. He went straight upstairs. Same room. Silas stared at the message. He didn't flinch. He didn't panic. He didn't even breathe heavy, because deep down, he had known. The truth had been pounding in his chest for weeks. Now it was confirmed. They didn't come out all day. At 6:20 p.m., Silas finally rose from his chair, picked up his car keys. Not for business this time, but for truth. He entered a dark SUV and told his driver nothing. He didn't need to. By the time he walked into the boutique hotel, the receptionist greeted him with a polite smile. He didn't smile back. "Room 406, he said quietly. The receptionist hesitated. "Sir, are you—" Silas slid 2 crisp bundles of notes across the counter. "I won't be long." Her hands shook slightly as she handed him the spare key. Silas walked calmly to the elevator. He didn't rush. He didn't knock. He turned the key, pushed the door open, and there they were, Mariah in a white bathrobe, glass of wine in her hand. Toby shirtless on the couch, scrolling his phone. Both froze. The wine slipped in Mariah's hand. Toby stood up too fast, and Silas stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind him. Mariah's lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes darted to Toby, then back to Silas, as though searching for an explanation that didn't exist. Toby dropped his phone, tried to force a grin. "Guy!" Silas raised one hand. His voice was flat. "Don't." The room went still. Mariah's glass trembled in her hand. "Silas, I can explain." He looked at her, his face unreadable. "Don't lie, not here." Her breath caught. You followed me?" Silas's voice was calm, almost too calm. "I stopped trusting you 2 months ago. Now I know why." Toby stepped forward, his voice hurried. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," Silas said, his eyes sharp. "And worse." Silence. Mariah tried again, her voice breaking. "You never saw me. You were always married to your company, always absent, always, and you," Silas cut her off, "were always married to my account. You and my business partner." Mariah flinched, as though his words had struck harder than a slap. Toby opened his mouth, but Silas didn't let him speak. He turned his gaze on both of them, slow and steady. "You married me for this?" Mariah's lips quivered. Tears threatened, but no words came. Silas took one last look, first at her, then at Toby, the man he once called brother. His voice was quiet. "I hope it was worth it." And then he turned, opened the door, stepped out. No shouting, no punches, no chaos, just the silence of a man who had finally seen everything he needed to see. The hallway light bathed his face as he walked to the elevator, his steps unhurried, his heart heavy but steady. Behind that door, Betrayal sat in silence. Inside him, resolve began to take shape. That night, Silas returned to the mansion. He didn't eat. He didn't speak. He went straight into his study and shut the door. The house was full of furniture, glowing lights, imported curtains, and the scent of expensive candles. Yet it felt emptier than a graveyard. He sat there in silence, staring at nothing. The faces of Mariah and Toby replayed in his mind, over and over, until anger burned into something colder. Resolve. Silas reached for his phone. His fingers moved slowly but firmly. The first call was to his lawyer. His voice did not shake. "Prepare divorce papers," he said, effective immediately. The second call was to the company's accountant. "Begin the process to buy out Toby's shares, quietly, no delays." When he hung up, the silence of the study pressed down on him again. He leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped tightly together. For 2 days, he barely touched food. The mansion echoed with silence. Every polished surface mocked him. Every smiling photo on the walls reminded him of how blind love could be. But he didn't cry. The pain didn't come with tears. It came with silence. The woman he had called wife, gone. The friend he would have died for, dead to him. And still, in the background of this wreckage, the maid remained. Dupe, sweeping corners, folding sheets, serving food he barely noticed. When the divorce papers came back signed, Silas didn't flinch. Mariah didn't even bother showing up in person. She sent her lawyer. "Tell him I agree to everything," she had said. "Just give me my peace." Her peace. After planning his death, after scheming with his business partner, after sharing his bed while plotting his end, she wanted peace. Silas signed the papers with steady hands, but inside his chest burned like fire. That night he sat alone in the living room, lights on, curtains open, everything looking perfect on the outside, while inside his world was shattering quietly. But beneath the wreckage, a new foundation was already being laid. Because in that silence, Silas made another decision. He would rebuild. And this time, no one would catch him blind again. Toby did not take the silence lightly. At first, he laughed it off when word reached him that Silas had filed for divorce and was preparing a buyout. He told mutual friends it was a misunderstanding, that Silas is just emotional, he'll come around. But when the lawyer's letters arrived, when the board started asking questions, Toby's smile cracked. And then came the counterattack. Whispers spread through the business community, anonymous tips to journalists, blog headlines hinting at scandal, Crestrock billionaire under investigation, funds missing, who's really to blame. It was a smear campaign, and at the center of it all was one goal: make Silas look like the thief. Soon an official document landed on his desk. Toby had filed a countersuit. The claim? That Silas, not Toby, had been embezzling money. That the missing billions had been hidden by the quiet partner, the strategist no one suspected. The irony cut deep, because if Silas had signed that Dubai folder, the trap would have snapped shut perfectly. His signature would have tied him to every false account, every shady deal, every offshore transfer. By now, police would be at his door. Cameras flashing, neighbors whispering, headlines screaming, "Billionaire fraudster arrested." But he had not signed, and because he hadn't, the only thing Toby had left was noise. Still, noise can be dangerous. The board was restless, investors nervous. The company's reputation hung in the balance. Silas sat in his study at midnight, the countersuit spread across his desk. His jaw tightened, but his hands were steady. For years, he had built Crestrock on trust. And for years, Toby had been poisoning its roots. Now the rot was out in the open, and Silas knew. This was no longer just about friendship or betrayal or even money. This was war, and in war, the side with truth still needs proof. The night was heavy with silence. Silas sat alone in the living room, the chandelier glowing dimly above, his thoughts buried beneath lawsuits, betrayal, and the taste of loneliness. The countersuit lay on the table in front of him like a weapon aimed at his chest. And then, soft footsteps, Dupe walked in. She wasn't carrying a tray, she wasn't cleaning, she wasn't timid the way she usually was. She stood in the center of the room, her plain gown swaying lightly, her eyes calm but firm. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said. Silas looked up, startled. "Why?" Her voice was steady. "My assignment here is over." The words stung. His throat tightened. "You don't have to go," he said. For the first time in years, his voice cracked just slightly. "You're the only person who hasn't hurt me." Dupe's gaze softened. "I know, but I wasn't sent to stay, I was sent to save." Silas rose from the sofa, each step toward her heavier than the last. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. "Save me from what?" Her voice lowered, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "If you had signed that document, you would have lost everything. Not just your company, but your freedom. You would have been behind bars while the people who plotted against you laughed over breakfast." His jaw clenched. She stepped closer. "But you didn't sign. You listened. That means you're ready." "Ready for what?" he asked. "To start again," she said. "This time with your eyes open." They stood there, staring at each other in the quiet glow of the chandelier. Then Dupe did something unexpected. She smiled. Not the smile of a servant, not the smile of someone asking for favor, but the smile of someone who knew her purpose had been fulfilled. "Live right," she said softly. "Trust slowly. Love carefully. Watch everyone." And without another word, she turned, walked to the door, and slipped out of the room. Silas stood frozen, his chest heavy, his mind racing. He didn't chase her. He didn't call out. But deep inside, something was breaking and healing at the same time. The maid was gone. But the truth she left behind was enough to fight with. The morning after Dupe left, the house felt hollow. Every room sparkled, every surface gleamed. But it all rang with emptiness. Silas didn't linger in that silence. He turned to the only battlefield left, his company. He called in a small circle of trusted allies. Not the usual managers. Not the directors Toby had charmed with dinners and parties. People who owed their loyalty to him alone. Forensic accountants, legal advisors, men and women who understood how to trace shadows through paper. The instructions were simple. "Uncover everything," Silas said. "Don't stop until every hidden kobo is on the table." And so the war began. Spreadsheets piled up, bank records surfaced, offshore accounts were traced one by one. Shell companies with fake names, addresses that didn't exist, signatures, forged with precision. Every line told the same story. Toby had been bleeding Crestrock from the inside for years. But this time, Silas wasn't just the quiet strategist. He became relentless. Every night he stayed awake with files spread across his desk, marking inconsistencies, highlighting transfers, piecing together the empire of theft his friend had built. It was like standing in a battlefield where the bullets were numbers, the bombs were transactions, and the truth was the only weapon strong enough to strike back. The deeper they went, the stronger the case became. Documents that Toby thought were hidden appeared under Silas's lamp. Transactions routed through 3 countries now lay clear in black and white. Even payments disguised as consulting fees and permits unraveled into proof of betrayal. It wasn't quick, it wasn't easy. But little by little, the puzzle formed a picture that no one could deny. And when the evidence was finally complete, Silas closed the last folder, leaned back in his chair, and exhaled slowly. He was ready. The next battlefield would not be in secret. It would be in the boardroom, and this time Toby would not be facing a brother. He would be facing the truth. The day of the board meeting arrived. The conference room at Crestrock's headquarters was packed. Directors, lawyers, investors. The air was thick, not with celebration, but with suspicion. At the head of the table sat Silas, calm, silent. Beside him, neat folders stacked in a pile. Across the room, Toby swaggered in with his usual grin, suit sharp, cologne heavy, eyes dancing like nothing could touch him. "Gentlemen," Toby began, "before we waste time with distractions, let's address the elephant in the room. Funds are missing, deals have collapsed, and the culprit," he turned his eyes on Silas, "is sitting right there." Murmurs rippled across the table. Silas didn't move. He let the room breathe in the accusation. He let Toby's words hang. Heavy, then slowly he reached for the top folder. His voice was low but steady. "Gentlemen, allow me to show you something." He slid the first set of documents across the table. Dates, transactions, transfers. At first, the directors frowned, flipping through pages. Then their brows tightened, their lips pressed thin. Every line traced not to Silas, but to Toby. Toby's grin faltered. "What is this?" Silas didn't answer. He opened the second folder. More evidence, more trails. Offshore accounts linked directly to Toby's name. Fake projects, fake signatures, money routed to banks in Dubai, Seychelles, London. One director leaned back, stunned. "These aren't mistakes, these are decisions." Another slammed the folder shut. "This is fraud." The room grew louder. Whispers turned into accusations, accusations into anger. Toby's voice cracked. This is forged. He set me up." Silas finally looked at him. His eyes were cold. "For years I called you brother. For years I trusted you with everything. And for years you were robbing us blind." Toby's fists clenched, sweat gathering on his forehead. "You can't prove." Silas opened the final folder. Bank confirmations, independent audits. The nail in the coffin. The room went silent. One of the senior directors spoke, voice heavy with finality. "Call the authorities." Toby's charm had finally met something it couldn't sell. Numbers. As security entered the room, Silas leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. It was the quiet satisfaction of a man who had chosen truth over noise. And for the first time in years, the empire he built was safe. By the end of that week, headlines blazed across every business paper. Crestrock partner arrested in multi-billion fraud case. Toby Attawale in custody pending trial. Photographs showed him in handcuffs, his once proud shoulders bent, his eyes darting away from flashing cameras. The same man who laughed loudest at board dinners was now hiding his face from the world. For Silas, it wasn't victory. It was necessary, justice. But as one house collapsed, another crumbled quietly in the shadows. Mariah. The divorce was finalized, the ink dry, but the sting remained. She had vanished from the mansion, from society's parties, from the circle of women who once envied her. Whispers followed her wherever she went, in restaurants, in boutiques, in salons. People turned their heads and whispered, "Isn't that her? The billionaire's wife who betrayed him?" She tried to hold her chin high, but the stares burned deeper than flames. One evening she called Silas, her number still in his phone. He let it ring twice, then answered. "Silas." Her voice cracked, fragile, desperate. "Please, I know I made mistakes, I know I hurt you, but I don't know how to live like this. Everyone hates me. The man I trusted is gone. And you hate me too." Silas was silent. He could hear her breathing, the soft sob in her throat. Finally, his voice came low and steady. "Mariah, I don't hate you. I don't have the strength to. But I can't save you either." Her breath broke into a sob. "Please, just tell me what to do." Silas closed his eyes. Memories flashed, her laughter at their wedding, her touch on his cheek, her betrayal in room 406. "Start over," he said quietly. "The same way I am, without me." And then he ended the call. Mariah stared at her phone screen, tears streaking her face. For the first time, she realized what she had lost was not the mansion, the cars, or the title. It was the one man who had truly loved her, and that she could never get back. Weeks turned into months. The storm around Crestrock slowly quieted. Toby's arrest dominated the news cycle, then faded as trials dragged on. Investors returned, comforted by the clarity of the evidence. The company stabilized, leaner but cleaner than it had ever been. Silas, however, was not the same man who once walked into that boardroom with blind trust in everyone around him. The mansion was quieter now. No laughter from a wife. No whispered warnings from a maid. Just silence broken only by the sound of papers turning or the occasional piano keys he pressed late at night when sleep refused him. But in that silence, something new grew. He returned to his roots, visiting old business mentors, listening more than he spoke, retracing the early days when success wasn't about champagne dinners or magazine covers, but about building something that mattered. He cut down the excess. Fewer parties, fewer empty faces, fewer handshakes with people who only saw him as a walking vault. Instead, he started investing in smaller ventures, young entrepreneurs with ideas but no capital. People who reminded him of himself, hungry but overlooked. For the first time in years, his wealth felt purposeful. And though the scars of betrayal ran deep, he carried them not as wounds but as armor. At night, sometimes, he thought of Mariah. The way she smiled when they first met, before greed poisoned her heart. The way her voice cracked on that final call. He thought of Toby too. The brotherhood turned into ashes, and of Dupe, the quiet maid whose warning saved his life, then vanished as though she were never real. These faces haunted him, but they also shaped him. Because now, Silas was no longer the blind billionaire who thought trust was free. He was the man who had learned the hardest lesson of all. In business and in love, not everyone who smiles at you wants to see you alive. 1 year later, Silas stood on the balcony of a modest new home overlooking the city lights. He had sold the mansion, saying he no longer needed marble halls to feel alive. The world saw him as the man who survived scandal, rebuilt his empire, and turned betrayal into strength. Investors respected him. Young entrepreneurs admired him. Society watched him cautiously, but with newfound respect. Yet beneath the surface, Silas remained the man who carried scars invisible to the eye. On this particular evening, as the wind brushed against his shirt, his phone buzzed. A message. No name, just an unknown number. It read, "Trust slowly, love carefully, watch everyone." The words froze him in place. It was the same farewell Dupe had whispered the night she left. The words he thought only he remembered. He stared at the phone, his heart racing. He typed quickly, "Who is this?" No reply, just silence. Silas lowered the phone, but instead of fear, a faint smile touched his lips. Somewhere out there, she was still watching. Maybe a maid, maybe something more. He didn't know, but he knew this. Whatever storms life brought next, he would never again walk blind. Because the poor maid who once saved him had left him not just with warnings, but with eyes that could finally see. And with that, Silas turned back inside, the city lights glowing behind him, ready for whatever tomorrow held. Sometimes the greatest threats don't come from strangers, but from the people closest to us. Silas lost a wife. He lost a brother, but he found something far more valuable, the truth. And the lesson is clear. Trust slowly, love carefully, watch everyone, because not every smile is honest, and not every hand extended is there to lift you up. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that will keep you thinking long after the screen goes dark. Until next time, stay wise, stay safe,